Members present, we'll call this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Ava and Kevin, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments about the agenda as presented? If there are none, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes. Next item is approval of the minutes from the governing board meeting of December 5th, 2023. Are there any questions or concerns about the agenda? Or, I'm sorry, about the minutes from the previous board meeting? If there are none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the December 5th, 2023 board meeting as presented?
I make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Oh,
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't
Okay.
at the meeting.
okay. So passes 4-0 with one abstention. Okay. Next up, we have a presentation from our district superintendent on the potential HVAC bond discussion or idea.
Okay, very good. So as you recall, 2 meetings ago, about a month and a half ago, I believe, one of our board members asked for us to kind of gauge potential community support for replacing all of our HVAC units at the same time using local funding. We talked about at the time that it's possible to do that, and we have heretofore been doing it through a very slow process through the state with the School Facilities Optimization Board funds. When one of our units gives out, we have to document that through professionals coming in and taking a look at where it's at, and then apply to the State Facilities Board. It comes to our governing board a couple different times for votes. You've been through that process, and we have a couple of different measures tonight, or a couple of different potential grants from the State Facilities Board that you'll be voting on. Anyhow, long, slow process, but it's doable to replace them as, well, I shouldn't say as necessary, after necessary, how's that, as they fail over the years. And that's essentially what we've been doing. That's the way we operate, unfortunately, with virtually everything that's a large capital expenditure. We have to wait until a roof fails before the roof can be replaced, et cetera. There's not any such thing as preventive maintenance funded by the state. So with that in mind, and knowing that HVAC units are not only key to comfort of students and staff, but safety as well during certain times of the year, and with the recent focus on ventilation units and whatnot during the COVID pandemic, this has come to the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And so we asked our community what you think. You might, I'll just for your recollection read to you what we had at the beginning of the survey. It said, click here for important facts regarding Arizona's K-12 education funding and how bonds and overrides work. 1 minute read, so there's some brief bullet points about that. And then we said PUSDs, HVAC units are mostly older, less efficient, and quite expensive and difficult to repair. The estimated cost for replacement of all outdated units is approximately $13 million. HVAC units can eventually be replaced using state funding. Talked about that, but the process is slow and difficult. Click here for the current process for HVAC replacement. 1 minute read. Don't know how many people clicked on those things, read them, processed them, but that information was available to them. And then just two more sentences here. The PUSD Governing Board is considering, and it said, considering was underlined in an italic, so it's not done deal, folks, if they should ask local voters for a bond measure on ballots in 2024, primarily to pay for replacement of all outdated HVAC systems on each PUSD school campus. The governing board would like to get input from as many PUSD voters as possible to help the board make informed decisions. And then we just asked five very short questions. We asked, are you a community member are you a PUSD parent or staff member, or alternatively, you're another community member who's interested? We sent the survey in a link to all of our families and gave them a couple of reminders. The Courier was very kind to help us advertise this. We had it on our website, we had it on Facebook, etc. But as we'll see here, the response from our parents was great. We had hundreds of people, and from other community members, very low. We had 21 people total. Do you live in PUSD boundaries was a bit of information we asked, and we could break it down by that if you'd like. And then we just asked about two different questions. One, $13 million bond, only for HVACs in the way that's been described. Or two, the second question was a $15 million bond for HVACs plus a bit of technology. That's certainly going to be a need that that the State Facilities Board won't help us with when the time comes. We've got lots of Chromebooks and ITVs and whatnot that we use regularly for educating kids, and they're in good shape now, but they won't be in 6 years. And we're going to need to have some way to pay for replacement of those. A bond is one typical way that most districts in Arizona do that through a bond. So we said, well, in addition to $13 million, if we put $2 million for technology, how would you feel about that? And wanted to see if we got substantially different responses there. So those were the questions, and you can see the answers up here. The total number of responses, I'm not sure how well you can see that, the graph all the way to the left. 304 people responded to the survey, which is quite a few. That's good. That gives us a good sample size. Of the 68,000 constituents we have in PUSD, it's a very small number, but it's still a lot of folks. And of those folks, 283 of them were our current staff or parents. And as I mentioned, 21 other community members. You can see the level of support. We asked them on a scale of 1 to 4. So it would essentially be binary: 1 and 2 less support, 3 and 4 more support, right? So we wouldn't have people land right in the middle, because there is no middle with that. And you can see the general support was very high. People said, you got a bond issue? Yeah. In general, 3.56 for the $13 million bond overall, and 3.51 out of 4 for a $15 million bond. So nearly identical for both levels of bond from the full group. Then if we break it down by parents and staff, you can see that's where the real support came from, was the large group of people who are closely affiliated with PUSD said, you need something, we'll help pay for it. When we asked our community members, it was a different story. Still a relatively high level of support, 2 being, again, kind of in the middle, right? 2.76% of people, and interestingly, a higher level of support for the $15 million bond, but I'll tell you why. It's a very, very small sample. Of the people the 21 people, 12 of them gave 4s to both. And 8 of them gave 1s to both. We had one additional person who said, for the $13 million bond, I'm a 2. For the $15 million bond, I'm a 3. A single person who didn't say, I'm all in or I'm all out for that. And you can see the totals there. So what does this tell us? Well, you can draw some of your own conclusions for that. It's clear that in the community more broadly outside of our folks who are closely affiliated with PUSD, there's substantially less support. Maybe as telling or more telling than the raw data up here are the comments that we had 5 pages, I think, worth of comments that were included in your packet. I'll give you just a couple of samples. They ranged anywhere from Arizona school funding is abominable, go for the bond, the schools need the money. And go for it, we support you. Things of that nature. A lot of people said things like that. We had other people say, I don't support any new taxes, and you need to learn to manage your money better before first asking for more. In that same vein, having just paid my 2023 property taxes, and the largest portion of the total bill is Prescott school tax, $686. I believe another tax would be a burden to our financial health. PUSD should learn to live within the means you have. Replacement should have been done as funds were available. I'm not sure when that was, but that's when we should have done replacements, apparently. So there's positives and negatives. a lot of people mentioned the district needs to get this funding from the state, that it doesn't make sense to ask our local folks for this when the funding is available for the state. That was a common thing. The comment that I saw just on the front page that resonated most with me, this is not my own comment, but it said this, and these are my feelings if you're interested. It says, HVAC units can be replaced by gaining funds through the School Facilities Oversight Board, and taxes would not be increased. A single bond issue seems intriguing at first, but it is inefficient when funding is available. I think they mean from other sources. While the process can be time-consuming, it can work. I would be more interested in a wider bond that did more to upgrade facilities and technology than just HVAC. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like in as far as we've got any political capital with our community, people who are willing to support us and whatnot, I don't know that I want to spend it on HVAC units all at one time that then would be potentially need to be replaced all at one time in the future. That's one potential downside. And the other is that if we say, okay, HVAC units, then we say, boy, the technology is failing just like we thought. And we come back a couple years later, they're going to say, no, we just paid a bond. And say, oh my gosh, whatever else is failing now. We need new fencing because things are coming. No, we just paid for a bond. So my thought is, if the time comes that the board feels we want to go to the community for the support that the legislature expects that local communities will give to people, that's one of the reasons that they give for funding schools so low statewide, is that they anticipate that school district constituents will do what the constituents of the districts that serve 80% plus of the students in Arizona. So not most districts, because most districts are small, but the districts that represent 80% of kids operate off a bond or an override currently. That's a very, very common thing in Arizona, but it's not any more common in Prescott or Chino Valley or Prescott Valley. Our area has rejected those things. If there's a possibility of something like that passing in the near future, I would like to see it be more comprehensive and not just focused on something for which there is an excruciatingly slow but viable alternative funding source. Those are my personal feelings. What questions do you have? Brian's got lots of information about how that process works.
For Brian.
Yeah.
If we were to do all of our upgrading of our HVACs through the facilities, school facilities money, how many years do you anticipate that would take?
Well,
Depends on when they fail.
it's when they fail. We're actually
we're
engaging
only
with a
replace when they
company.
fail.
I did call them before the break and asked if we show district-wide need.
When you say them, you're talking about the school facilities board. Okay.
Yeah,
you
them
called
being the
Go ahead.
powers that be. Actually, our liaison, her name is Tashma. She does a good job. And they said, typically they don't do an overwide replacements because it usually needs to fail. I was kind of chiming in on the whole, on Chino Valley, that they had all the roofs done, but they had swamp coolers. They didn't even have HVACs, and so this was a time for them to get out of the swamp cooler business. So they said that wasn't a complete HVAC district replacement. This was getting HVACs in places and things. But they said if you show the need, there could be entertaining, and I could go and talk to the higher ups. And so we're having a company come on in and do an inventory of our whole district. And let's just say hypothetically, if 90% show that they could be replaceable, I'm going to pitch to the school facilities board for the next fiscal year to have them all done. If it goes on when they fail, my plan is to replace one every 2 weeks and go through that. And that's what I told Chris Moody this morning. In fact, I have one I'm putting in right now. So every 2 weeks times 300 HVACs, whatever amount of time that is.
Thanks.
300, you said?
Yeah, 350 HVACs in the district, 3 boilers, a couple other fancy ones that I don't even know what they do.
Yeah, one of the comments I got was just that people didn't really understand that the school doesn't work like a real business. They're like, well, why isn't the school saving up for these? Why aren't we just putting a bunch of money in a pot and we'll get ACs? And I'm like, well, we get it from the this whatever facilities board. So it was just a confusion as to how
Sure.
big things were financed.
Right.
And a lot of people were very confused as, well, that just sounds really stupid.
I would agree with those folks, yeah.
So,
And we
Yeah.
can't change it. So
And we can't change it. Okay.
stupid, yet not in our control.
Yeah, seeing this and the few responses, I would say no. I mean, I'm appreciative that you did it for me, but, yeah. And I would like Brian to go and see if we can get more done through the facilities people.
Will do.
But that's my opinion. You guys all have your own opinion, so.
No, I commend Carl for, like, just trying a different method, This is really, we haven't focused on one item, but I could see where we could kind of chase our tails after a while, whether it's technology, we start with HVACs or whatnot, but this was outside of the box thinking, and just we need to see how it would fly. I think we kind of got our answer, but knowing that there is a method with FSB, I think the people are definitely right and they're paying attention that there is something that we could go to. And is it tedious? Absolutely. But there is a method to doing it. And we don't mind you doing all the work, Brian. So, but and I think we would have to look at something a lot more comprehensive down the road when the time comes. But again, thanks for thinking about it that way, Cara.
It's good,
It's us
good
all
data.
thinking.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good data to have collected. I appreciate it as well.
I think as we look at any bonds or overrides, I mean, I'd like to see a couple of years of prep going into it so that we can address some of these issues about how funding works in the state, so people have an understanding that, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we generally, in general, we don't have revenue. We're not a revenue-generating organization. So, as you said, it doesn't operate like another business. There's not money that we can put aside. Everything that comes in is earmarked for something. And so, saving money for this isn't really an option. When I look at the response rates, even with 304, if you take all of them, knowing that a lot of them are PUSD parents and staff, 304 of 68,000 is 0.004%. So the sample is not great. And I think it just kind of shows where the interest is in the community at this point.
The one thing that I would, the conversations is when do we pay our previous one off? Because I think that will also resonate with voters. Our 2015, we won't pay that off, and that'll stay as a secondary tax rate until 2033. If we did this, then we overlapped, and that second one won't get paid off until about 2040. And if we had another, dire need for a bond, someone might say three's too much. You got your two. Until you pay those two off, don't ask.
And a very reasonable question, Cara, I'm glad you brought it up, that people ask us, why don't you just save the money they give you for major capital expenses and spend it when you need to? You mismanage your money. We don't get any money for major capital expenses. This is the way it works. It breaks, you prove it, you apply for it. Brian, how much money is left in the school facilities board funds this year for things?
Out of the 200 million, I think Tasha said this morning, they have like 40. So the roofs that we've been going through, we're going to go out for procurement, but they said don't go out until May because you're not going to get the money till July. So this is also another issue, is they're basically out of money except for emergency and safety issues.
It's on the fiscal calendar.
Correct. July to
Correct,
July.
yeah. Our roofs are failing. We'll apply, we'll almost certainly be approved because they'll say, yeah, absolutely, that has to be replaced, but there is no money for it this year. It runs out about halfway through every year. Yeah, the system is terrible, and there's nothing that we can do about it.
What was this happened before most of us were on the board, I believe, when Miller Valley was sold and this school, right? This was sold?
No,
No.
here we are. We
We're
haven't
in
sold
it.
it.
The one, wasn't the old,
Monte Dexter Elementary School was sold, and Miller Valley
What
Elementary School was sold.
happens to that
Good
money?
question.
I mean,
It sits in
Miller
a,
Valley
it
was,
sits in a land sale account that can only be used on capital items, and so it's in Fund 502. We've been using that for our single point entrance capital projects, and so out of the money in that, there's about 1.5 million left.
there's only 1.5 left?
Out of about 3. We got about 3.5 for all the properties.
Wow.
And that's also our teacherage. Our portion of the teacherage is going towards that, which is about 600,000. So we'll have about $1 million after our teacherage project is done.
Okay, so we can only spend that on hard, physical things.
Yes.
Permanent,
We could
Not-
buy an HVAC.
not
But we-
computers.
We'd only,
Yeah, buy half of one or something,
Right.
so,
and then we would exhaust all of our reserve for capital.
okay.
We get about 2 million in what's called DAA, which is our stuff, our capital stuff, software, assessment, all those things, math manipulatives. Those are capital. They don't consider them supplies. So we get about 2 million of that money. 700,000 we moved to M&O. We did that 8 years ago to help with raises. So that makes our stuff money about 1.2. That's how we're funded as a public district. Other public schools, like charter schools, they get more, it's called charter additional assistance. They're funded differently because they can't go out for a bond.
We've talked about this before. Brian brings up a really good point. If PUSD received the amount of charter additional assistance instead of our district additional assistance,
5.7
in 1
million.
year, it'd be $5.7 million more to our budget.
But we can't even, let's just forget they are there, because we can't compare us to them.
Right. What we need to
So
do is
it's-
talk with the legislature about
Absolutely.
being funded equally. And if we're able to do that, we'd be in an entirely different world. I mean,
Or, I don't care if they call it district additional assistance or charter. I would like to be able to, an HVAC breaks. What I do is I go through 7 steps before we can get it funded with SFB. Or if we have the money, we can call a vendor, get a quote, purchase it, have it in the time, the supply lines. I'm playing games where I'm purchasing it with local money, knowing we're going to get funded, because I can't wait until we get funded and then purchase it, and then have it be 7 weeks before the HVAC come, and kids are now 3 months in a classroom without heat. So it would be nice not to jump through the hoops when we used to be funded for things like this back before 2008. The Great Recession, they took all of our building renewal and capital funds. So we'll continue if the governing board directs to do it through SFOB.
One bit of good news for me to come out of this survey was how generally supportive, the more people know about our school district and the more invested they are, the more supportive they are. That came through clearly. Out of a total of potentially 4 points, 3.56 on a scale of 4 for our parents and staff saying, you need it? Oh, yeah, we'll pay more. That's fantastic. Now we just have to convince the other people in town. Some more good news there is, as we went out for a bond and override several years ago, people said, show us the results, then we'll step up and pay. The good news is, we can show them results. We'll be talking about that every day. So maybe that people will start putting money where their mouth is, or maybe they'll not. We'll see.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it. The next item is the summary of current events. Again, Mr. Tenney.
Okay, great. Thank you. Couple of things just really quick. One, you can see behind us, we have ordered lobby banners and banners for fences. We're looking at putting decals on buses. It's on our website, et cetera. Just advertising, as the board has asked us to do, our success with being one of only 5 A districts in northern Arizona. So we're pretty proud of that. And we're going to be getting that word out the very best we can. In addition to that, the Prescott Area Association of Realtors, I think I mentioned to you in my board report this last week, was very happy to be able to share with families who are looking to move into the area. We've got an A district here. You're not going to find too many throughout the state. Here's one right here. So they asked us to make a flyer. Our marketing director and Marty worked together, got something great, and we sent it to them. I contacted the hospital. They said, absolutely, please send it to us. That'll be a big deal in helping recruit physicians going forward. One of the things that people are concerned about when they come to Arizona, they can look at all the different rankings for school funding and school quality and whatnot online, and Arizona is right toward the bottom of the nation. But if they know that you've got one of the best districts in the state right here, that helps us a tremendous amount. And the city of Prescott, the same thing. They reached out to us and said, hey, do you have information about that? I said, yeah, we do. and they said it would help them recruit a lot as well. So we're glad to be able to share with our partners and bring good quality folks to town to help, particularly older folks in town who need medical care, et cetera. This is a big deal. So in as far as people are supportive of us, that benefits them in more ways than one. That's one piece. Another piece that you'll be interested in, the legislature is starting off their session this week. That sometimes means positive things for school districts and other times doesn't mean such positive things for school district. One of the real positive things I'm hopeful about is that both Republicans and Democrats in state leadership are talking about substantial raises potentially for teachers and other staff. So if they can get together on what that looks like and get the funding source from the State Land Trust in a way that's sustainable for future generations as well, that would be great. That would help us a ton. We'll see how that works out. What else did I want to mention to you? As is always the case, we lost a good handful of kids at the semester break, people moving out of town, but we also gained a bunch of kids. We usually have a net plus, and we did this year as well. We're up about 25 kids versus December. So we're up to 3,962 students enrollment as of just a moment ago. That's actually 11 students more than it was 4 days ago. So it continues to go up just about every day as people move into town. We're glad about that. It'll help us a little bit. And let's see, what else do I need to mention? I think our students are going to tell us a little bit about Hoop coming week, last week, I hope. Andy Binder, maybe you can give us a little bit of an update on our teacher housing.
Yeah, some really good news out of our teacherage front. Just a reminder to everyone, we have 6 units total for PUSD. And last December, we were notified that they were ready for move-in, and so we reached out to some employees who shared that they were interested, and we're a little nervous knowing that we were going to really only offer them a lease for 6 months, and that's pretty tough to be moving in. But as of right now, we have 2 teachers already moved in, and from what I can tell, loving it. We have a bus driver who's just about to move in, so we have 3 filled at the moment. And right now, I'm just kind of going through the others on the list to see if they're still interested. And then, from my understanding with the city, they have the 1 filled for police officers, and I believe they're selecting some right now for the firefighter unit. So lots of good news from our teacherage.
So that has changed from it being for an attraction to bring new teachers in. We are now helping our teachers who have worked for us. How
let
do
me
you
clarify.
determine?
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't want them sitting empty for the rest of this year, and so we told the folks that have moved in that they'll have this lease through the end of June, and then that way those units will be available for our new teachers come next school year. So as we start hiring in the spring here, we'll know that those units will be available.
Do we have a waiting list of existing teachers?
No, we have a list that have expressed some interest, and I've been going through that. And for the most part, they expressed interest back in September, and it's a different situation now. So most of the folks I've talked to said it's probably not worth it for them for just these 6 months. But there's still a few left on the list, and as we start hiring, we'll start filling them.
So it's rent-free for that until June for them, so they can save some money and...
It is not rent-free.
Okay.
The amount that we set for these units is $1,200 a month starting next year, but knowing that this year is only for half of the year, we reduced it to $800 a month.
Maybe we can think that a little differently, I don't know, to allow some of these teachers to be able to save more money so that they can become independent of us like we all did. We had to have roommates. We had to have, live with our parents.
For sure.
We had to save our money because we couldn't come out of college right into a house. No one that I really knew in my era was able to do that. But maybe we can do something a little more creative that will help some of our teachers if everybody's being retained, with our district for career choices, let's give them some incentive that will give them a foot up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know a lot of thought went into the amount of the monthly amount, and and correct me if I'm wrong, Clark, but it was basically what was considered was it 2/3 or 1/3 reduction in price of the going rate for a unit similar to this? Is that?
Yeah, as
more
we
or less?
talked with real estate experts, there
Yeah.
really aren't any other brand-new 900 square foot homes in town, so there aren't any comparables. It costs exactly this,
Yeah.
but the best estimate we could get from people is that would cost about $2,500 a month, so offering them for $1,200 is just less than half of what the market rate would be for something similar
That's a good
were it
thing.
to exist.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, as you suggest, Linda, we'll be using it as a recruiting tool going forward. Just we have a stopgap method to measure right now,
Yeah, I'd like to
keep
see
them
it
filled.
offered to our teachers who have stayed and showed loyalty to the district, and let the other ones who are coming from outside or just out of college, we don't have that. We've been very generous with salaries the last 6-8 years. But I'd like some kind of longevity incentive, something like that would help them.
We do have a longevity incentive. We call it raises every year. That's something that keeps people around. Yeah, the idea that the board had behind this and that we've been working toward all along was this would be a recruiting tool for new folks, give them a spot to land and time to find their own place. And I think we'll probably continue in that vein, but those are good thoughts as well. Anything else, Andy, about that?
No.
So yeah, we're pleased to have essentially filled right now. The city is looking at 2 police officers who are brothers going through the academy right now, moving in next month, and they're looking for another first responder to fill that up. So we're pretty enthusiastic about that. I've got one other thing, and then we'll turn things over to others. We received from the Arizona School Boards Association certificates for 2 of our board members who have gone through the orientation process, Jane Robertson and Linda Kahn. So if it's all right, I would approach you and hand these to you. Let's give them a hand. That is for you.
Thank you. I'll add that to all my credentials.
Put that in the trophy room, next to your elk head and hockey pucks and whatever else you want.
Yeah,
There you go.
I have a couple of those.
Very good. And that is all I have, I believe,
Okay.
Mr. Frere.
All right. Next item is governing board member reports. Does any board member have something to share with us?
Go ahead. You've been quiet. Okay. We usually kind of compete there. Well, during the holidays, the Christmas holidays, we were all so busy, and I tried to make it out to every school just to touch bases. I'm sure everybody else did. I tried to get down to watch Lincoln sing at the square, but it didn't happen, and I will definitely do that next year. But I did get on Acronite our angel Ava, who has the
Yes.
most wonderful voice. You are an incredible singer, and I didn't want to leave. You did such a good job.
I thought that was super nice. I was wandering around Acronite, tried to get to Ava right before she finished and saw Linda coming out. I thought, what a great thing to do to go and support one of our students that way. Thank you for that. And you're right, she does have a beautiful voice.
Okay. Other reports?
Current events from board members?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I did get down to watch Lincoln sing, and
Yeah.
that south side of the courthouse, and what a tremendous tradition. 50+ years of doing that, walking down from Lincoln School and singing Christmas carols and saying Merry Christmas at the very end. You get a lot of people that come out of businesses throughout town to watch it. It's an amazing deal. And a lot of people that, they now have kids in that school, and they're watching and they went to that school, and,
Right.
you know, so quite the tradition. And then also the giving machine, and I know I kind of mentioned it a little bit when we at our last board meeting, but there's a lot of volunteers from NHS and various schools that's volunteered down there, and it was great to watch them be great spokespersons for our community, and a lot of charitable organizations throughout here, and they owned it. I mean, so we have some tremendous kids, we know that, but, you know, they were just representing themselves, but they're representing their service organization as well.
Okay. Others?
Only thing I could mention is that I got to lead the 500 Abaya Judd kids in their giant Christmas sing-along, and it was quite it's fun to sit there with 500 kids and say, let's do it, kids. So it was fun.
Didn't you have one
been a-
other?
Did I have what?
Thought you had one other item, too.
I did. I was going to do that later. unless you want
I
to
think it's
do it
actually
now.
part of current events. We're there now.
All right, let's do it then. We also the Prescott Education Foundation went to the PEP Assembly on Friday at the high school, and we were able to present Nash
Demano Simmons,
the president of the Student Council, I believe, with a $35,000 check to the high school to bring the library up to 2024 standards. So it was huge. What a, right?
Wow.
Yes, Mr. Adams in the back. Yes, so that's good.
That's great.
So that was pretty exciting to see the kids
Great.
all realize what, actually a big impression on the kids and the students, and I was pretty proud of the foundation.
It's super cool. The foundation does so many great things for us. In past years, if I might, Mrs. Robertson, they have done grants for teachers who said, hey, I've got this cool idea and whatnot, and sometimes that we've been able to carry that forward for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Other times we have teacher turnover and you know, the water pressure gauges or whatever it was that they paid for. Sometimes the shelf life for that is not as long as they were hoping. So they decided this year they would shift to combining all of the money they have available for those and giving it to one school at a time in sequence, starting with the high school, going to Mile High next year, et cetera. I think that's a neat, kind of exciting way to do things, and you're exactly right, $35,000.
Right, I think it makes a bigger statement because we had done individual teacher grants for so long.
There you go.
And we'd reached the point where we weren't getting quite as much participation as we had before, so we came up with a different idea. So high school's top on the list, largest school we have, and then next year we'll start probably, I think Mile High is next, and then we work our way through, and that way the staff can decide, you have X amount of money, how can you best fit the needs for your particular campus? And that's a lot of money when you put it together.
It is.
And let the staff decide what works best for their schools, so.
And the high school had some
Pretty cool, pretty exciting.
Yeah. High school had some exciting ideas, like you say, for transforming their library with 1964 wooden furniture into kind of a student union type of a situation that would make it more user-friendly for kids, place that they can study, places they can congregate, et cetera. So we're excited about
Pretty fun.
what they're going to do with that, and really, really appreciate the Education Foundation stepping up
And
to help
Stan
fill the
is
gap.
on that board
That
with
is
me
right.
as well, so there are 2 of us on that board.
Yeah. I do have one other item, and it's sad news, but we lost Coach Kaler here very early and you know, young in his life, but he coached for our PHS wrestling team for many, many years, did a tremendous job, and he'll be greatly missed, but I'd be remiss if we didn't mention him.
Absolutely. Touched a lot of lives, had PUSD kids who are alumni of our schools as
State
well.
champions. That's
Neat
right.
family, and we'll miss Coach a bunch. Thanks for bringing that up.
Linda, did you have one more thing?
I had one more, yeah. I, in December, worked cash for college at Yavapai College, and we've gotten 4 applications back. We have thousands of dollars to award to high school students, and I'd sure like a lot more of our Prescott High School students to apply for that. Through the Kiwanis Club, they're just waiting to give you money. I think the deadline for the application is April, but I'd like to say, yes, these are Prescott High School seniors that they can get an award.
Neat. Thanks for doing that.
I guarantee they're
They
coming.
will. Yeah, they will
There's
be
gonna be a
there.
flood. They do a
Good.
good job with that.
Good, good.
So, Cara, did you have any? Over the break, I was able to attend Acronite and was really impressed with the PHS band and the choral group that was at the Hacienda. That was one of the highlights that evening. Did work the giving machine, but for an outside organization, but was able to work with a high school student at that, and that was a lot of fun. Just really good people that would come by and give money to things in the community. Ms. Kahn, Ms. Woods, and myself attended the MIC TED campus tour out near the airport right before Christmas, and learned a lot about what they're doing out there, and saw all the fantastic facilities and equipment that was there. And I want to thank Dave Clever on the MIC TED board and Bill Steitler for setting that up for us. And I know that their assistant did most of the work, but they were the ones that organized it, so we appreciate that very much. And then just with all the finals going on and everything, I haven't been able to get out and meet with my schools and departments, but I'm starting that back up next week again. So we'll be going out to the high school and the ESS department.
Another thing I didn't mention, that if you haven't heard the Prescott band lately, we are on the move, guys. We have gone from a spot where it wasn't looking very good to a spot where they might be small, but they are mighty. They
Yeah.
sound so much better this year, and I understand the middle schools have a much larger
Yep.
program, so I think we're moving in the right direction with the band. So it is pretty fun to go and listen to them play. It's just makes my heart soar to hear us moving in the right direction there, because that was a
Yeah.
little worrisome for us.
And it's amazing talent. I mean,
Yep.
the students
getting there.
here are just really, really talented, so really pleased.
Great new
Teach
band
your math.
director.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Student board member reports.
Okay, so we had hoop coming last Friday, which was the Sadie Hawkins dance, which is the first time in a few years that PHS has done a girls Ask dance. And last week was also Student Appreciation Week and Spirit Week. Basketball did beat Bradshaw. It was the first day of second semester last week, and then the first day of second semester for early college today. And then the check for the PUSD library was presented at the PEP assembly.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like Ava covered most of the hoop coming extravaganza, but going back a couple weeks to before break, I know that through NHS and Miss Wood, there was a partnership with the Family Resource Center and some other local organizations to get, I think it was over 70 kids, Christmas gifts around that time of year. And then also, I think that this is a big one for me as the person that takes all of my agenda review meetings in the library, but the library will be much appreciated by students. And then I think that if it was touched on by beating Bradshaw, but also the boys basketball team, it's my understanding, is first in the Grand Canyon region, and then specifically Uriah Tennant is, I believe, averaging more than 30 points a game right now, which is the most I've seen in a really long time.
Number one in the state right now, is that right, Mr. Neely? He's top scorer in the state of Arizona in our classification, is what I read.
I think, as a person who has talked to other kids at the school, that is what at least children are saying. I don't know if I can't verify that, but that's what the kids say.
You can take it to the bank, Kevin.
That's great. Something to watch.
Thank you. All right, thank you, guys. We appreciate your input, as always. All right, moving on to action items. The first action item is the consent agenda. Are there any questions about the consent agenda items?
Oh, I had one question. Actually, it's a double question, I guess, if I could get my mouse to work. It's on, I have it here somewhere. The board personnel. Can you just read it and just inform me what, we hired 2 new people, and can you tell me what they're doing? We have a sped compliance monitor.
Yes, so working with the ESS director, right now we have a huge need between compliance and coaching, and that needed to be kind of expanded a little bit. We also have kind of an adjustment to one of our elementary teachers, and the compliance, this compliance monitor is going to be supporting that teacher in kind of a new role.
So are these administrative?
Yes,
Administrative
what's the
role?
other one you're referring to?
The SLP,
A speech language pathologist.
speech language pathology, we didn't
Yes.
have one?
We had an opening for that.
What's that?
We
have
had an opening for that one, and
Oh.
that's, it's not listed here, but that is a .4 FTE position.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was based on basically student need. We had a lot more students that required SLP services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions about the consent agenda?
I'd like to take the donation minute, unless you had a question.
Oh, I just have one more question for you. On the classified staff,
Yes.
why do we need a tutor in the grants department?
So all tutoring is run through the grants department, so that is student academic tutors. And
ESSER-funded tutoring program.
Oh, okay, so it's
finishing
not a
up this year.
tutor to.
No, these are student tutors.
Yeah.
It's just located in that
Thank you
area.
so much for that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's a good question. Is it, if you're unclear about that, those are great questions to be asking. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
That was a good question.
The donation minute. Just want to highlight the donations from 1 December to the end of December. Donation from Greg and Carol Vandersteeg in memory of Glenn Welshin in the amount of $50 to the PHS band. A donation from Danielle Davis, a check in the amount of $150 for Lincoln Art. A donation from Sandra Brunso, a check in the amount of $300 to the PHS Auto Club. That's okay. A donation from Granite Mountain Middle School, PTO Incorporated, a check in the amount of $1,795.20 to the Granite Mountain Arts and Crafts. A donation from Whole Kids Foundation, a check in the amount of $3,000 for Farm to School program. A donation from Dana and Steve Schott, a check in the amount of $200 for PHS Boys Tennis, and they did another check in the amount of $200 for Girls Tennis. A donation from the Prescott Lakes Pickleball Club, a check in the amount of $200 to the PHS Choir. Carol Hubert donated a check in the amount of $100 to Banquet and Food. A donation from the Board of Supervisors, the Yavapai County Winter Card Contest Award, a check in the amount of $250 to the PHS Art Program. A donation from Donna Ogo. Items donated was a recorder, trumpet, hand drum, music stand with an approximate value of $300. A donation from Stephanie Billis, a check in the amount of $55 to the Mile High Wrestling Team, and a donation from Scott Bidow, various items for the mountain bike team with an approximate value of $3,060.51.
And one additional one on there from the Goligoskis, a check in the amount of $572.50 for Taylor Hicks, the Blippi field trip. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was a special needs program, and they asked to go to the Blippi program in May, and they didn't know how to fund it, and so we just thought we'd fund it, and the kids were ecstatic. They gave us presents, and it was just amazing.
Nice.
So great.
Thank you.
Can I jump in really quick and say this? Sometimes when I'm out in the community and I present that, Arizona, we actually just moved up. I think I shared this with you, with the board. The Education Law Center put out their report for this last year. Idaho has dipped below us in per student funding, so we're up to 50th out of 51 in the country. And with that situation, as you know, without a local bond or override and without receiving the federal funding that typically goes to the rural schools that have a large population of Native Americans, et cetera, we are 16th from the bottom of all districts within Arizona for funding. And I have people ask me, with that level of funding, how do you do what you do? How do you retain great teachers? How are you an A district? How are you in the top tier of all of districts in Arizona for your test scores, et cetera? And there's a number of things that go into that, but two things that I say very regularly. Our volunteer program, we have so many great people in town who step up, and at almost no cost to us, help supplement what we can do in the classroom, and then the donations that we receive from people. The PUSD Education Foundation, perfect example earlier, and then just individuals in town who say, I got $50. I want to help out the PUSD band program. That's so awesome. Without the kind of people who step up and actually give us help, not just cast stones from across the street, but actually give us help, we wouldn't be as successful as we are, and I just love the people who have a heart for that.
Yeah, well said.
And in addition, tax credit donations that we
No
receive
question.
from the community as well.
Absolutely.
Up to $400 per family, correct? That can
For
be
a couple,
donated
yep.
to the public schools. So that helps us additionally as well. And designated to specific areas within the schools. So, okay. Any other questions about the consent agenda? All right. If there are none, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll move that we accept.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And that motion passes. On to study and voting items. Ms. Torres, do we have any speakers? Okay. So our first item in study and voting, Mr. Neely, consider approving an out-of-state travel request for the PHS Challenge Club students, staff members, and volunteers to travel to the San Juan River in Utah from April 10th to the 14th, 2024.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Happy to be here. So our Challenge Club is again going to be heading to the San Juan River for a float trip. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Howard attended last year for this trip. I think he bragged to you guys about it. But super proud of this program, outdoor adventure. It's a really neat learning experience for these kids. Right now the permit is for 18, but their hope is to bump that up to 25 if they can. And that would be, but even if it sits at 18, that would be a mix of students and chaperones taking part in this trip. Do you guys have any questions for me?
No, I'm glad that we're staying in the country, though. That is of paramount importance to me, with safety.
I don't think a float trip outside the country would be quite as...
White water,
No, the kids love this one.
How's the funding for this? Where does the funding come from?
Yeah, good question. So it's fundraising through Challenge.
Okay.
They also have, I'm not sure actually if they have a cost on this one.
No,
I believe that it's all funded through the Challenge program's ability to go through. and do
Contribution, they're suggesting each participant make a $50
okay.
contribution, but
There you
that's
go.
it. The
There you
rest is paid for by the Challenge Club.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. Mr. Dean is covering basketball. He
Yeah.
would have been the expert on this one, but nonetheless, he asked that I'd come through and do this for you. But yeah, so $50, and again, it's a suggestion,
Correct.
not a requirement.
Correct.
But I do just hopefully want to make sure people understand that the Challenge Club does receive outside donations for activities such as this. And I know when REI opened, they
Yes.
came up and were presented with some funding as a result of REI wanting to be involved in the lives of teens in the community. So
It's all tax credit eligible too.
yeah, and tax credit donations and things like that. So just want to be sure that, people understand that this is money that they raise. This isn't district funds that are being
Yeah,
spent.
this is a popular one. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Galagoski mentions the Challenge Club often when he's talking about those donations.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other questions for Mr. Neely? Okay. If there are none, can we get a motion to approve an out-of-state travel request for the PHS Challenge Club students, PUSD staff members, and volunteers to travel to the San Juan River in Utah from April 10th to the 14th, 2024, as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, our next item is to consider adopting proposed changes to governing board policies GCO and GCBDA as presented from Mr. Binder.
Yeah, thank you. So just to remind everyone, the first one I'll cover is GCO, which relates to kind of the protocol for our administrators to follow when there might be a need for a teacher improvement plan. We want to make sure that we're following proper protocol, and after looking at the policy, we realized there was some outdated words in there, wording that referred to our old evaluation tool. And so not a huge change, but we revised it to kind of match this current evaluation tool. So basically the process is, it allows for our administrators to review a teacher's performance mid-year, and if necessary, put them on an improvement plan, or based on the summative at the end of the year. Whereas again, that's really no different than the prior policy. It's just the old policy was referring to a point system that our new tool doesn't have. So that's the change in GCO. Any questions on that policy?
It's probably not on this policy. I just have a really tacky question. Can I ask it?
Sure.
Can I ask my tacky question? Are teachers on, what's it, IPO?
An improvement plan?
Performance plan. Do they get their 301 bonus at the end of the year?
So, I mean, if they're on
Right,
an
it's
improvement
like-
plan and the improvement plan comes and goes and it's determined that they are, they can continue on, absolutely, they will continue to get their 301. If they're on an improvement plan and they don't meet the expectations of the improvement plan and the board votes to terminate, then no, they would not. So the improvement plan is a tool to help them improve. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions?
I just want to point out that if anyone is interested in reading these policies, they are on the district website under governing board and district policy manual. You can find these policies, GCO and GCBD, and BDA is a procedure, right? So you're going to talk about that
I'll
next.
do that one next.
As well, Mr. Fair, they're attached to the agenda for tonight as well,
Yes.
right? With the
Yes.
proposed changes, so
Yeah.
they can be found in a couple of different places.
Right.
Yes, and GCBDA relates to the teacherage, and having this be new to our district, we decided that it was important to have a few items highlighted in policy. Most of the things will be determined based on the lease, and that may change from year to year, but there was a few things specifically around weapons use, drug, tobacco, and alcohol use, and the idea of who's determining some of the conditions of the lease. So that's GCBDA, just to kind of make sure that we have certain things in policy that can't be changed within the lease. Any questions on GCBDA?
Okay. And this is the second reading of these, so we are voting to adopt these policies tonight. So if there's no questions, then I would ask for a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policies GCO and GCBDA as presented.
I'll make a motion that we adopt those proposed changes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes. Our next item, this is a special one. We need to do this twice, correct? Or, okay, I'm just going based off the agenda. Next item is consider approving the purchase of a new fire alarm system at Prescott Mile High Middle School with an estimated cost of $381,641.22 as presented. Brian.
Just when you think you don't have nothing yet to learn, I learned something when the auditors came. Usually with higher dollared items, we go to bid. We either do an RFP, a request for proposal, or an invitation for bid. At the beginning of the year, the governing board does approve consortiums that allows us to bypass those procurement thresholds because those consortiums have already vetted the companies and they have won bids elsewhere, and that's how one way you get on the consortium. So in that case, there isn't a bid. So I just said, we don't have a bid. Usually it goes to the governing board. And my answer was, well, even if it doesn't go anything over 100,000, if you pay for it, doesn't matter if it's a bid or a consortium, the governing board needs to give permission for that purchase. So through the SFOB, Mile High's fire alarm system needs to be replaced. And so they have funded it, and we are using a company called Intelligrated Communications. They are on a consortium, and so the bid's not coming to you, but because of the price tag, it is.
But again, this is through SFOB.
It is.
Facilities.
So this
So,
is,
but and it is through SFOB. They'll give us the funds. So it ends
Sure.
up being Prescott Unified
Yes.
Funds, but the
Yes.
funding source is not our general fund or taxed
okay.
income. But no matter what, even if it was one of those funds, I would need to bring it to you
Right.
and say, we're purchasing this. You
Right.
can ask any questions you want on the purchase. And then if you say yes, then we can engage in business with them.
Okay.
I just thought it was cool that we are gonna approve this purchase, and then right here in the next one, we're gonna get that money, like,
That-
on the same day.
I know.
That was the
Love it,
next,
Brian.
the next thing I was going to say was,
We have to kind of do it.
When I thought about it,
doing
I
it
said, I need to
twice.
put this on the same for Cara, because she will absolutely find that to be entertaining. So
okay.
that is it. And to be really honest, I scoured there, because there's not only statute, but there also is Arizona procurement code and regulation. So there's 3 different documents you have to follow. One can't supersede. I literally could not find the regulation or the statute number for this, but I know it to be true, and thus it's in front of you.
Are there other questions about this item? Okay. If there are none, then can we get a motion to approve the purchase of a new fire alarm system at Prescott Mile High Middle School with an estimated cost of $381,641.22 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. The next item, similarly, to consider approving the School Facilities Oversight Board terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites as presented. This last item will appear on this.
Yeah. So
there
the
are
first,
additional
the first one
items.
was giving permission to engage in business. This is to receive the money. So if one was a yes and the other was a no, we wouldn't have been able to do it anyway. So both yeses, we can now not only enter into business with with the company, but also receive the funds from SFOB. The terms and conditions for all projects basically outlines what they expect the district to do, and that is do what we say we're going to do with the money and do all the things that they want us to do to get it. So, and then I think there's 3 HVACs on there.
Yes. 3 different sized HVACs.
Yeah, 20, a 7.5, and a 10, I think, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So that's about 1% of the HVACs that we have in the district that are being replaced.
Yeah, well, yes, it is.
Maybe a little less than
And we'll
1%.
see how many I can get on there for the next governing board meeting, given that it's only a couple weeks away. You'll have at least one.
Okay. Are there questions about this item for Brian? Okay. If there are no questions, then could we get a motion to approve the School Facilities Oversight Board terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have The next item of business is to consider approving an intergovernmental agreement between Prescott Unified School District Number 1 and Yarnell Elementary School District Number 52 for maintenance service for buses. This is Mr. Tenney.
Yeah, just really quickly, we have the privilege as a larger school district in our area to help out some of our smaller partners every once in a while with, sometimes with professional development things, with IT things in the past, we've helped them out, and with bus maintenance as well. We're fortunate to have a great diesel mechanic who works for us, who works for Prescott Unified School District, a school district that only has, say, 25 kids can't afford to have their own mechanic. So they can contract out to, Joe's diesel mechanic shop someplace, but that can cost them a ton of money, or they can come to us and say, hey, would you be willing to help us out? So we're charging them just slightly more than it costs us to employ our gentleman. We talked with our transportation director and with the mechanic and said, is this something that you feel you can do? We're doing this already for Skull Valley Elementary School District, and Yarnell has approached us and said, could you help us out? And we looked to see, do we have the capacity to do that? Yes. We're not trying to make money off of them. It costs us about $38 an hour to employ this person. I think we're looking at $40 for this. So basically just the cost of having him not be always working on our buses exclusively is where we're at. So helps out a district that sends kids to us and is a partner with us and doing the same type of great thing, trying to help kids learn. And that's the idea. Questions?
Oh, I have one question. I'm not quite sure how to ask it. We're paying, Yarnell's paying us $40 per hour.
Yep.
Plus parts,
Correct.
whatever
Yeah,
else we need
yeah,
to
yeah.
buy. If, I don't know how many hours our PUSD mechanic works on a Yarnell project, then how does that affect his salary with PUSD? Does he work overtime then, or does he work on Saturdays? How do we balance that?
Yeah, great question. So he's a full-time employee with us.
Right.
We don't just have him come in, as
And
needed.
he's on salary?
Right. Now he's not on salary.
So
He
he's
gets
by
paid
hour.
hourly, same as a
Okay,
parapro or
so-
whatnot, but we have a certain number of hours that he's
All right,
scheduled to
so
be
if
in each week.
4
and-
hours of his week were spent on fixing a Yarnell
I think-
bus. How does that work?
If that was the case, we'd be in trouble. He doesn't have
But
the
it's
kind
not.
of
It's just
capacity to do
much
4
rare.
hours a week. We're probably talking about, 6 hours a year or something like
Okay,
that. And he
that
certainly
answers
has
my
the
question.
capacity for that.
Okay.
Yeah. They've only got a couple of buses and they don't break down that often. They do
Okay.
need
No,
maintenance
that
every once in a
answers-
while. They'll
that
bring them to
answers
us,
my
yeah.
question,
And
fine.
so talking with him and with our transportation director, they said, we can do this. If Humboldt came to us and said, we want you to do this, we'd say, ooh, we're in
Okay.
trouble. We can't do that. But Yarnell, with their needs, we can
That's all I
accommodate them.
needed to know. Good.
So our bus driver or our mechanic would be going down there, or they send the
Yeah,
bus up?
I think in the past, they've always sent the buses to us.
And is this just for the school year, the fiscal year, or is this from now on, or
Sure.
as needed?
The initial IGA, I believe, is it just for a year, or is it for 3, Sarah? I don't remember the term. Okay, so, yeah, just for this next year, and then we typically come to the board each year and renew if it's worked out well for us and for them.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
I think it's important for people to understand that there's a lot of collaboration that goes into working with these small schools. And it's not just our time and our efforts, but bigger picture, if you're not familiar with the Forest Fee Management Association and how we get additional dollars out of that, our smaller districts basically have most of the land that they get funding for through the county every single year. It goes to, half of it goes comes from the county into the schools. If we didn't have, now keep in mind, they have the smallest population of kids out there, but they also, because of their land mass, also provide the most amount of funding. So when we do things like this, the bigger picture is it's 4 hours out of the month or so for Yarnell, but it's a lot of money that we get to, not only just the collaboration, but we also go into this big pool in order to help us out with professional development or technology. And we've done this for a lot over the years. So this collaboration is nothing new, and it's great to see. And I appreciate that we're helping out the small districts because, they can only do so much, but the land outside really helps our school districts as well here. And that's unique to the western half of the United States.
Whenever we can help out our neighbors without having a negative impact on our kids, we always want to step up and do that.
And how many students, I'm just curious, and maybe this isn't relevant, but
You
how
might
many
have a better
students?
feel
Yeah,
for that.
usually 80 in Yarnell. Yeah,
Okay.
that's typically anywhere to 80 to 90 students in Yarnell.
Do we know how many of those end up coming into our district?
Right. It
The vast
varies.
majority, they do send some down to
Send some to
Wickenburg because
Wickenburg,
they're close down there, but the majority end up coming to us in high
Okay.
school.
So we should see a Yarnell bus coming to drop students off at the high school.
Yeah, we go down as far as Peoples Valley
Yeah.
and Yarnell. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about this item?
And that mechanic gets a special, he just either gets a paycheck from us or a paycheck from Yarnell? Or do we give him an extra stipend or?
Good question. No, we keep him fully employed regardless whether we work with Yarnell or not. He gets paid for, I think he's a 40-hour employee, yes?
Both, yes.
Yeah, he's a 40-hour employee, so he gets paid for 40 hours a week of work with us, and sometimes it's working, under the hood on things, sometimes it's doing things in the transportation yard, et cetera. But yeah, he'll spend a little bit more time under the hood of a bus. They just won't be all our buses, and whenever there's a cost to us to work on Yarnell's or Skull Valley's buses, we catalog that, and then we bill them for that, and they send us the money for that, so it offsets his.
Because he's pretty valuable.
He's very valuable. He's a good guy, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, helps us out a bunch.
And the
Decent.
first thing we ask is, do you have capacity?
Yep.
And he says
Yep.
yes. And we have 4 Yarnell kids.
Okay.
There you
We
go.
have a what?
4
Yarnell
Oh.
kids. So by the time they get to high school, yeah, some of them come to us, some of them go down the hill.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then can we get a motion to approve an intergovernmental agreement between Prescott Unified School District Number 1 and Yarnell Elementary School District Number 52 for maintenance services for buses as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes. All right, coming quickly to the end here. The next item is consider nominations and election for the position of governing board president. Prior to that, I just want to be sure that all board members are aware that in our policy manual, policy BDB covers the duties of the president of the board. We can read over those if you want, but they are available to you there. I would encourage you to read those. Traditionally, this is a one-year term, and it passes from member to member depending on our vote every year. So we are open for nominations for board president at this point.
I would like to nominate Mr. Stan Gulagowski to serve as our governing board president for 2024.
Okay. Is there a second? I will second that nomination. Mr. Gulagowski, do you accept that?
I do.
Okay. Do you have anything that you'd like to say?
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Do you think you have the time to put into this with all that you're doing?
100%. Always have plenty of time.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Stan Gulagowski serve as the president of the PUSD board for the next year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Touchy.
Okay. The-
Punch you first, though. Okay. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. The motion passes 3-1 with one abstention. So, Mr. Gulagowski, you're the board president from this point forward. So the next item of business is yours.
All right. Consider a nomination and election for the position of governing board vice president.
I would nominate Jane Robertson as vice president.
I'll second that.
I would like to nominate myself. I'm not using my position on the board to
We have one
springboard.
motion, yeah. We have one motion on the table right now.
Well, they pushed that through.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay, I do. I oppose.
Okay. Did you vote?
Yes, Jane will make a fantastic
Okay.
vice president.
Okay, that passes 4-1. Next item is information and discussion items. Brian?
As presented,
What's that?
as presented,
And
Oh, I have a
presented.
question.
Love it.
unless you have questions.
Okay, the maintenance and operation funds, we're right there. We can roll those over if we do not use part of that money. We can roll it over to the next year, and that's called carryover or something.
Yeah, carry forward.
Carry forward. On the federal grants, is that still a possibility, or do we have to spend every penny of the grant money in that year?
Every grant differs on that. And so that's one of the things we are absolutely certain. For example, the federal Perkins grant or the state priority grant, that's specifically for CTED. If you don't spend it, you have to give it back within the fiscal year. Other grants, like our entitlement grants, they do roll, just like our M&O and just like our DAA. So the next year, we'll have that carry forward to apply to our needs.
And if
So-
it carries forward, it still has to be used for whatever the
Correct.
specific is.
Yes.
And the same for the state grants?
Yes.
Iffy? I mean, it's like.
It depends on which one it
Depends
is,
on
and
what
they're
it
all
is.
called restricted grants because it's restricted on how you can spend it. So if it rolls, it still has to be spent within the parameters of the grant.
And there's no way to take that money and roll it into the M&O?
No, that's called,
That's
No.
called embezzling or something?
No.
Okay.
now there's something called supplanting, which is using grants or other funding sources to alleviate your general fund of an expense burden. It's called supplanting, and you can't do it.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to know about the carryover. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
It's a very good question.
It's an excellent question. A lot of people have misconceptions about that. If we just get more grant funding, then we can do whatever we want with it. Every grant has lots of strings attached, and you have to make sure that you follow the parameters very carefully.
Oh, I do have one more question. Sorry. We have $1,300,000 in a fund called Stronger Connections. Can anybody tell me what that does?
There's 1,300,000?
It's one of the federal grants.
Oh, well, that is one too many zeros.
I think it says 1,300,000.
If it says 1 million,
It does, 1,345,000.
yeah, that would be about 1 million too many. So that's not right.
So it's
That's not
100
right?
130,000, that's a typographical
Yeah,
error, is
let
that
me,
what you're telling us?
let me look real quick. Is it what's the fund number?
315. I just was wondering why we had so much of it.
The Stronger Connections grant is a branch off of the ESSER grant, and it allows for certain things that we did, like our tutoring, that's paying for specifically out of this rather than ESSER. I'm gonna have to look. I don't think-
Okay, so
Marty,
maybe it's
do you know
ESSER money,
from
that's why it's so
Maya
much?
If it
kind of?
was really 1.3.
Okay.
I'll email you on that.
You can get back to me.
I will. In fact, I'm gonna look right
I just
now.
wondered why we had so much and what we could spend it on, so,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Good question.
Our designated site subs are coming out of that. So actually, it may be 1.3. I can get you a list of everything that is being spent on this year.
Okay, so, yeah, just telling me that it's ESSER
Yeah.
money is a
Yeah,
little bit.
it's all of
part of
those,
that.
it does.
But Brian, if you wouldn't mind for me and for Ms. Woods as well, if you can confirm the amount and then
I will.
what it's spent on
And in
generally.
fact, I'm going to
Sounds like you don't need an itemized list, but what the general categories are.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
what we can spend it on and what we are.
Now that you
spending it
said
on.
the fund number, it may be actually right, so.
Yeah, 315. So, thank you.
Good questions. That's what this portion of the meeting is for, is to take a look at the information you've got. If you've got questions about it, let us know.
Any other questions? All right. Community comments shared with the governing board. Do we have any?
Okay, I had one, and I think it's just it's a feeling that some people have in the public that you might want to address, okay? And it's a feeling that we're graduating, what, 85, 90% of our kids?
Yes.
And the test scores for the high school are not 80 to 90% proficient. So I guess the offset is shouldn't they be proficient to graduate? Like, isn't graduation saying that they're proficient and it's not matching up? So it's just something that is out there that the public is concerned about. I mean, we're graduating all these kids, but then we're not seeing it. And I understand how you feel about test scores, but still, it would be nice if they were like a little bit closer.
Sure, yeah. Great question. At the high school level, we're very fortunate now that we've got the ACT test, which is a nationally normed test. So it's not like our K through 8 tests where somebody just sets a bar and says, you got to meet the bar. And when a kid doesn't meet that bar, somebody says, you can't read. Well, he can read just fine. You didn't read as high as the bar that they set, right? But for the ACT, we do have a bar that's set. That's set for people who are headed to college. And we see that our kids, generally speaking, do very, very well compared to the national norms on that. So generally speaking, we are not graduating kids who have not shown proficiency.
David, did you have a quick comment?
Yeah. I was just going to mention that I think that sometimes it's a little difficult to judge the academic performance of a child based on their state or national test scores. And I don't think that that's something that should affect graduation. As someone who personally doesn't test well, it's more difficult to measure the abilities of a student based off of their state and national test scores.
And I would say also, having worked in higher education admissions, that we went away from utilizing those national test scores. A lot of schools are doing away with ACT and SAT scores because what they found is that a better indicator of performance in college, at least, is grades, high school grades.
Right, so just recently they've reversed that, and colleges are going back to using standardized tests because they found that the high school grades are being inflated. That's from the colleges.
Sure. That trend is, you're right, is kind of going back the other direction for a
Right,
lot of, when you say
so-
they, that's a broad
Yeah.
way to talk about it, but many universities are heading back the other direction.
Right, so,
It's
yeah,
ebbed and flowed over
it's
the
not-
decades.
Not cut and dried, but I just want you to know that it's out there.
Sure,
It's something that
absolutely.
you can address, okay?
Absolutely.
That's all I was bringing it up for.
Good. I appreciate that, and it's absolutely worth being aware that there's that perception out there, and it's a good opportunity for us to share as well context for that. We do fairly well on the ACT test, our kids, in spite of the fact that, as Ava suggests, there's some kids that just don't test well. They've got the knowledge base, they got the
Right.
proficiency, they didn't test well. Another thing that we've been challenged with for years now, I'll back up and just say, when I was teaching at the high school, initially we were doing the AIMS test, and if you passed those with in the highest category, each of those tests, you got free tuition to in-state universities. If you didn't pass them with at least the second highest category, you did not graduate. There was a huge incentive for kids to get on the stick and do their very best on those tests. These days we say, all right, everybody, we're taking the ACT test. Some kids are college bound, and it means a lot to them. There's a lot more buy-in than there used to be. But we have other kids who say, all right, what happens if I do well? Nothing. What happens if I do poorly? Nothing. Okay, C. So our test scores are sometimes, for that reason, we have a hard time getting buy-in. You can't force a kid to do their best on a test. And so there are situations, I don't know that it's widespread, but there are situations in which a child's test scores are more a function of their motivation that day than they are their proficiency.
Okay, but you yourself, you say we do okay on the ACT?
Right.
But we do excellent on our graduation rate. So, I mean, there is a, okay, I'm done
No,
venting.
that makes sense
Okay.
to me. I mean, that might be something that we want to consider doing, a community forum or some
Yeah.
kind of a night where we just talk about these issues, because they come up over and over and over again. And some of it is a misunderstanding, and some of it's not.
Yeah,
So I think it would be.
there's some,
it would-
there's some legitimacy to
denial.
that concern, for sure.
So I think that would be probably worthwhile for us to think about that in the
Right.
future.
And we should talk as well about what the alternatives are. Should we keep kids for a 5th year? Who pays for that? I didn't see anybody raising their hand.
No,
So-
I've been working all year on that, bringing volunteer tutors in. And I've spoken to you a number of times about that. If in fact our curriculum and our lesson plans through the digs are all aligned to the state standards, and the people who create the state tests are teachers, community worker, or community members, and administrators, then our 53% of our children that don't do well on the state standard test should be doing better. I don't agree with retaining them, but I do agree with assigning tutors more often and bringing them in. We have a bunch of community free tutors, and they don't work all the time. We don't hold those kids accountable by having them have a tutor every single day. If they're not making it in the win time, then let's do a little bit more. Let's give our teachers a little bit more responsibility because they know what those kids need. We are all out of touch. We have not been in the classroom. You can go in and visit, but you don't have the boots on the ground like the teachers do. And those teachers should be asking for all kinds of volunteers. It's a pet peeve of mine that so many of our kids are below proficient. And I see you sitting there and listening to me carefully, but you've now been in your position for quite some time. I have not seen any data of what's going on in the classrooms. I can't get into the classrooms.
Can you explain that comment? You
I
can't get into the
cannot.
classrooms. What does that mean?
I cannot.
You give me some examples of that when you've been denied access to classrooms?
Examples of not getting in the classroom.
Yeah, that's curious to me to hear you say that.
I get escorted into principals' offices. I don't get observing in classrooms to see that they're being benchmarked on a consistent basis. I did go to the interventionists, and that was during the summer. They were having those, and I was so enthused with wind time. But, you know, our test scores are now published on the Arizona report card. That is what the parents see. That's what the community members see. And that is what I want to see, is these come up. They're all there. We've had them since when? July? When you came on and Mrs. Steinberger, what's her name? Renee
Steingraber.
I'm sorry, I'm trying this year. Turned over a new leaf with calling people by a professional title. And it seems to be just denial with these test scores. And they are the measure that we use. So I want to see some data. I want to see how our kids are in a catch net, that if they start to fall behind in 3rd grade, which many of them are, and if you're not reading by 3rd or 4th grade, you're going to have a very hard time catching up, especially when we socially promote every year up through the grades and then try and fix it later. Let's be more proactive.
So Linda, you and I have had long discussions. I know you've had long discussions with Mrs. Secor as well about our intervention programs. It's really curious to me to hear you say this in public tonight because it doesn't match what's been shared with you. Our test scores have been public for decades. You're saying that it's like there's some new revelation.
Last year's. That's why I asked what we did with all the COVID relief money. I wanted to know what the ESSER 3 money is being used for.
I spoke with a lady who left in the middle.
sorry.
I spoke with a lady who left in the middle. I had to go outside. She said exactly the same thing that you're saying right now about us being in denial.
That's what I'm hearing from
And so I spoke with her about a few things, like the COVID money, and so I can share that with you if you want in a meeting
I
in
would
my
love
office.
to. I
Once
just
again,
want
I'm
answers.
available for you.
I want to see where the disconnect is. If we're putting if we are truly getting an A,
Well, and
then we are, that is one factor with the test scores.
Yeah.
You're adding in all the student wellness and all that other stuff that kind of waters down test scores.
Yeah, it was just, like I said, I can sit down and I can go through how we spent all of our COVID money and all of that, because I wanted to ask, because when we mentioned we had an A district, there was a laugh, and so I asked her, and she said we're in denial on how poorly we do, just like you were.
Just one comment on that. Have we tested the midterm benchmark, mid-year benchmark? Have we taken those yet?
Like, sorry. Galileo.
High school is starting that this week, I believe.
Okay. Can
We
we
have.
get the results of that whenever
Yeah,
you
so
have
they
them?
won't be ready probably for another 2 weeks,
Okay.
but by the next board meeting, we should have some.
Okay, thank you.
One final thing. As a person who does take a lot of tests as of late, I would strongly urge you to, I think learning encompasses for everyone a whole lot more than just test taking. And as somebody that has done broadly well on tests, I think that I can acknowledge they are not the most accurate measure of what I think everyone in this room would agree upon as a definition of learning. I think they are more accurate measures of a student's ability to memorize sets of facts or recognize patterns, which, I mean, is not, I would say, the broader definition of learning.
In high school, that is true. And, but in elementary school, when you're learning to read, learning to do math, and not really reading to learn, if you will, just throwing up facts and things. But as an elementary school teacher, middle school teacher, and with what we had as this pandemic that just interfered with so many children's lives, I really am interested in getting the teachers who are down there trying to work with all those children the help that they need. You are very structured and you do very well, but some of those other kids don't have that opportunity, and God bless you for that. I'm for the underdog, and that's really what I want. These kids that don't test well, there's other ways. Teachers know how to do all these kind of things and observe a child. And if they're falling through those nets, let's not just pass them on socially. Let's pass them on socially with help.
So perhaps I'm misinformed, but I was under the impression that you had seen a lot of the interventions we were doing in the elementary schools.
Yes, I have.
Well, you just said you hadn't been into any classrooms.
I haven't in the last couple months.
So
I saw what they had in the summer school.
So I thought you, for example, had visited Abayajud to watch the side-by-side program.
I did.
And also
that
the
was-
other heavy-duty phonics program that Melissa Scott runs.
Right, and
with
I
Jeff.
was training some of the
Okay,
tutors
so
on
you
that.
were into those classrooms this year.
I was, so
Okay.
I could get the volunteers more, feed them more in, yes.
Okay, and I'm
Not
I'm
enough.
guessing, I'm assuming that you thought those were potentially really good programs that would help with the interventions that we're looking to do?
I think they're adequate. That's what we chose to use, and yeah, I think they're helping. if they're doing what they were going to do, what Karen Hughes said in the beginning of the year, that when she moved to Granite Mountain, that they were going to do wind time, and they were going to do these programs. I know we have your sister who is doing all of that. I haven't heard anything about that. No updates,
But
nothing.
They are doing that at Granite Mountain, the WIN program.
And every elementary school.
And the elementary
Yeah.
schools are doing it.
What, 1 hour a day?
I believe it's an hour a day.
Which is a huge
Which is
amount
huge.
of
That's huge.
instructional time that they're taking for
I want
intervention
more.
or enrichment.
I want more.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just having siblings who are very, like, I have siblings in elementary school. My family has been very, very involved in this district, and I have never once seen a classroom where a teacher, especially in elementary school and or middle school, has not been willing to provide the extra help, extra hours, extra learning that a student may need. So I think that it may not be necessary to implement extra hours of these programs and take away important instructional time.
No,
I don't.
Yeah.
I think that
that's not what I'm getting at, yeah.
yeah, and I think that it's just a matter of being informed on what's going on inside the classroom as well as outside.
Good discussion. Anything else?
Well, I just want to say that the results speak for themselves. I mean, yes, these test scores at the elementary schools are not what we want, but they are higher level test scores for public districts in the state. When we see what our high school students are doing upon completion, when we see that their ACT scores are on average at the college level average, our students are making it. They're doing fine. Now, there are always going to be some that we need to do more with. Of course there is. But I know our teachers are working at that and doing that. If we can get enough volunteers into the schools to help with that, fantastic. Let's do it. But I don't know that volunteers are going to solve this issue. And it's going to take a long time to turn this ship. We've made progress. Our test scores have gone up. But it's going to take a long time. We don't turn this ship on a dime. And I think since COVID, our scores are better now than they probably were prior to COVID on these Arizona assessments. So I just think we're making progress, and it's not going to happen overnight.
I did hear the word disconnect come from you, and I understand where that disconnect is. Do I have an answer for it? No. I don't think any of us in Arizona have an answer why there's a disconnect of the state's telling us our proficiency levels are what they are, but they're also handing us an A letter grade for the accomplishments and the achievements of our students. I really think that question needs to be directed towards AE and towards the State Board of Education of why is there a disconnect when you're saying this is proficiency, but then we're able to achieve an A letter grade and be in the top 20%, sometimes top 15% of schools in the state as far as academic achievement. Our kids are doing great things. Is it showing through test scores and the cut scores that the state has shown us? No. But when we look overall and how we're comparing to our peers around the state, absolutely. We're doing amazing things, and I'm incredibly proud of our teachers and our kids. They are doing everything that they possibly can. We're always continuing to grow and to move forward and to see how much more we can improve. That's always our goal. But it's with the best interest of students in mind. I wholeheartedly agree with what Ava said. I think our kids are more than just one test score on one date and one time, and our teachers see that. So we're not just promoting just to promote. We're promoting because they have the skills. They might not be a great test taker, but we're promoting because they can do the things that we're asking them to do. Maybe not on a state test, but they're doing them.
Thanks, Kelsey. All right, there's nothing further. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, February 6th at 5 o'clock, right here. Other dates to remember: Friday, February 16th, Professional Development Day. There's no students. And Monday, February 19th, President's Day holiday. All offices and school sites are closed. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned.